We are back yet again on the Thick Mending Podcast. This week we are going to talk about NFL free agency, but first off, a few quick announcements. First, we appreciate your continued support. If you want to interact with us a little bit more directly, ask us questions, go join our Discord, link in the description, and we'll either answer them on the podcast or in the Discord. Secondly, go support us over on Underdog Fantasy. Sign up using promo code THICK with 2 C's, and Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100. Free money. Doing that helps us out a good bit. On to the topics, and first off, Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks in football history, is on the move. The trade is not official yet. There's still negotiations for leverage and whatnot between the Jets and the Packers, but old Aaron is going from Green Bay to New Jersey to play for the Jets. There have been a lot of leaked lists of who he wants to join them, whatnot. He claims those aren't true. We know they are because he's an egomaniac. But Rodgers will be in New York next season if things are to be believed. And while this is a good move for the Jets, it makes them a playoff team. I just don't think it makes him a contender. He's not going to be a top 5 quarterback in the AFC. There are guys like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and even Trevor Lawrence, if he plays like we saw him play towards the end of last season, who are just better than a 40-year-old Rodgers. He's with a good defense, he's got good skill players, but he's behind the worst offensive line he's ever been behind, and that could give him some trouble, particularly considering his old age. I think it's a good move for the Jets, a first-round pick or whatnot, big deal. It's not going to be a great pick either way. You're not losing much, and you could compete, but I just don't see this moving the needle. The Jets aren't going to be a Super Bowl team. They're not even going to be a contender. They're not even going to make the AFC Championship game. They're just not good enough given what else is in the AFC. If Rodgers really won a Super Bowl, he would have gone somewhere in the NFC. But it's neither here nor there. Tristan, tell us what you think about Daniel Jones now being the third best quarterback in New Jersey behind Aaron and, of course, is it Joe Flacco? Is he still in town? Joe Flacco.
Well, me and you have very similar opinions, I think, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers moving to New York, playing with the Jets. And I really don't understand why the Jets are going after Aaron Rodgers when there's Lamar Jackson still on the table. If it winds up being true that they have to give up 2 first-round picks to get him, they had the opportunity to pursue Lamar Jackson, who's in the prime of his career. He's young. He's more athletic. He has the potential to win more MVPs. I think everyone that is sane can agree Aaron Rodgers is well past that point, and I think it's ridiculous they're giving Allen Lazard $11 million a year just in the pursuit of adding Aaron Rodgers to the team. I mean, they already had Garrett Wilson. They already had Elijah Moore. They didn't need to pay a receiver who hasn't had more than, I believe, 800 receiving yards, who was playing with Aaron Rodgers at the time, to come play for their offense. It doesn't move the needle. They're better off targeting someone young in the draft, so I didn't get that move regardless. I would have preferred they stayed the course, continued to build the roster. They've already built a phenomenal defense. On the offensive side of the ball, they have the offensive weapons to be successful, and it's just been the quarterback position where they've been struggling. But Aaron Rodgers, getting him for maybe 2 years, they're not going to win anything. Like you said, he's maybe the 7th best quarterback in the AFC now, especially what we saw last season, and I don't think he's the answer to fix all their problems. If they're giving up for a first-round pick, multiple firsts to get him, it is not worth it, in my opinion.
I mean, you stopping or you gonna keep going? I'm gonna talk about Lamar a little bit. It makes sense why the Jets didn't go after one. MetLife turf's not good for the old joints, and Lamar's injury prone. But second, if you sign Lamar Jackson, you're giving up 2 first-round picks for a quarterback who's more likely to get hurt than Aaron Rodgers, and who you're going to have to sign for a much longer deal. And if it's fully guaranteed, he's going to be with you for 4 years. Rodgers is much more of a rental, where if he doesn't work out, okay, we still presumably have a decent team built up. It just didn't go with Rodgers. We can either draft someone or sign another free agent. Lamar, you're locked into him. If he doesn't work out, you're in trouble for a much longer period of time.
Yeah, but it feels like, I think we all can agree that the Jets have a very solid roster, and if they continue building, they could build a juggernaut for over the next 6 seasons, maybe even more, if they build correctly. But if they truly are going to give up multiple firsts to get them, you're already the 3rd most popular NFL team in the state of New York. You now have maybe the 7th best quarterback in the AFC. If Tua is healthy, the 3rd best quarterback in your own division with how Aaron Rodgers has been going, and you don't even know how long he's going to play. So he's talking about retirement after the season. So it's a desperate attempt to recreate the 1-9-7 season they had with Brett Favre. For some reason, they want to run that back with the second version of Brett Favre. And I don't think it is going to lead them to the promised land. I mean, they're still not better than the Chiefs. I'd still pick the Bengals over them with all the weapons the Bengals have and how good Joe Burrow is. And then I'd still pick the Bills in their own division with Josh Allen. So it doesn't truly move the needle, but maybe it makes them relatively relevant for next season and the season after. I don't get the move. I think they should have maybe continued to build their roster where that means targeting a younger quarterback, targeting another quarterback through the draft. They're not winning a Super Bowl with them.
Silver lining, from what we've seen most recently, it may just be a day 2 pick for Rodgers, which, hey, even if you're paying him a bunch of money, he's only there for a year. A day 2 pick for a top 10 quarterback is still a good deal. That's the only way I think this is a really good move for New York.
Well, that also brings me to something that I think we should talk about with this, is that the way it's looking, the Packers and Jets are playing a game of chicken. The Packers, now that they know the Jets are the Jets really want him, they're looking to get first round picks out of him. But on the other hand, it appears Aaron Rodgers only wants to go to the Jets, and it seems like no other teams are interested in trading for him. So I don't know if the Packers are going to be willing to let Aaron Rodgers retire, or if they're going to be willing to take less trade compensation to get him, because I think even the Jets know he's not truly worth a first-round pick at this point. At best, knowing he probably only play for 2 more seasons, he's worth a 3rd-round pick with the current level of production we've seen him kind of put up. So I think it's who's going to give in first. Are the Packers going to be willing to let him retire, or are they willing to take less trade compensation? And I kind of feel like the Jets are eventually going to give in, and it's going to wind up being a 2nd-round pick or even that 1st-round pick.
1 year of possibly elite quarterback production could be argued to be worth a first-round pick. But the issue is, if Rodgers really wants to, he could just show up in Green Bay and make life miserable for Jordan Love and the Packers' new organization, or the new administration, or their new style play they're rolling in with. He could do that and just completely divide the locker room. I don't think the Packers want that. I think they just send him home and he could be a malcontent on Pat McAfee's show, Twitter, and whatnot. But there is a route for Rodgers to fight back if he really needs to get himself out of Green Bay. Obviously, this is all hypothetical. I think it's about time for us to move on, but long story short, Aaron Rodgers doing Aaron Rodgers things. Egomaniac hippie moving to New York. Indeed. On to another team which won't be winning any rings. This one just liberated from the tyranny of Aaron Rodgers. Chicago Bears have parted with the 1st overall pick in exchange 2 first-rounders, 2 second-rounders, and DJ Moore. And it's a good trade for the Bears. They get 1 immediate short-term relief. They're getting a top 10 pick in DJ Moore, who is a low-end wide receiver 1, middle-of-the-pack wide receiver 1, not a truly elite receiver in the grand scheme of things, but compared to what they've already got already, it's not a bad receiving core. The O-line's still not good. Maybe they fixed that in the draft, didn't really fix it that much in free agency, didn't sign Orlando Brown, but it's a good move for the Bears. I think it helps in the short term. It's giving Justin Fields more weapons. He can no longer complain that he is no one to throw to. Moore, Claypool, and Mooney are a good triumvirate of receivers. And if they don't at least double their win totals next year, I think it's pretty clear the problem lies in the quarterback.
I think this trade, I know Isaiah a couple weeks ago talked about, the Bears can't trade away from drafting Will Anderson. They have to take him with the 1st overall pick. But the compensation they got is incredible. They got DJ Moore, who, like Isaiah said, he's not, and I may have alluded to in the fact that he's an elite receiver in the TikTok I made about him. That might have been a bit of a hyperbole. More realistically, he's a low-end wide receiver 1. But Darnell Mooney got injured last year. He's going to be back this season. He's a solid receiver. You have Chase Claypool, who's a solid receiver. I think anyone who calls him trash is just doesn't like him because some of his off-the-field antics. And DJ Moore is a very solid receiver. So having those 3 receivers in the receiver room is very good. I think that's a great move for them. And then when you get pick number 9, it gives you the opportunity to draft one of the best offensive tackles in the draft. The first 4 or so are very good. It gives you the opportunity at some point in the draft to address receiver again. Probably maybe you then address edge rusher. And then getting a 1st next year from the Panthers. If the Panthers truly fuck up the quarterback position this year, or if they choose to have the rookie sit behind Andy Dalton for a year, that pick next season could likely be another top 10 pick. So for that 1st overall pick, you got a possibly high production receiver. You have a top 10 pick this year, a top 10 pick next year, and pick 61 this year, so it's back end of the 2nd round, and then you'll have a 2nd next year, which I don't think any of us think the Panthers will be quite that good, although they do play in the NFC South, so a high 2nd round pick this year. Overall, I love the trade for the Bears. It was a little weird when they signed Tremaine Edmonds, considering the fact that they were willing to move off of Roquan Smith and let him go to the Ravens last season. I know the Bears fans are like, you got a 2nd round pick and Tremaine Edmonds. Well, Tremaine Edmonds isn't quite as good as Roquan.
Quite as good is too polite. He's not as good as Roquan. Roquan's a top 2 linebacker in football.
Yeah, and the reason the Bills are willing to let Edmonds walk is because Edmonds wasn't even the best middle linebacker or inside linebacker on his own team, that was Matt Milano. So Tremaine Edmonds isn't near as good as Roquan Smith. You'd rather have Roquan Smith in that defense. He's just the better player. So it's a bit of cope there from Bears fans. But overall, I think the future's looking really bright for the Bears. And Isaiah just hates Justin Fields because he's a Michigan fan. He doesn't want to see Justin Fields succeed. And he's a Vikings fan. He doesn't want to see the Bears succeed. So don't take his comments seriously. He doesn't even truly think any of that's going to happen.
Justin Fields has not succeeded yet. He has not had a good season. He has had one season where he was a functional runner and 2 years where he was a terrible passer of the football. Okay, let's talk about Will Anderson a little bit since you brought that up. You can draft all these players you want, and let's say you get 3 functional starters, more included. Half your picks land, half them don't from that trade. I would much rather have one superstar talent, which Will Anderson has the potential to be a top 3, top 5 defensive player in the NFL, than just 3 average starters, which is more than likely what the Bears are going to get with this trade. I would still rather have that. Oh, draft picks are great because they could be anyone, but Will Anderson is him. We know Will Anderson is. He's going to be a great player, and the Bears passing up on getting him probably going to come back and bite him, particularly if Moore does not produce immediately. Second off, I'm unmoved by the tackles in this year's draft. Sure, some of them are good, but someone's going to overpick at 9 and actually get one. These are not guys worth a top 10 pick. They're middle rounders, late first rounders at best. The best 4, not that good. I prefer previous years. I prefer guys like Charles Cross, Nick Ekwonu, who came a very long way. I might even still prefer Evan Neal, although he got put in a rough spot to change positions on the Giants because Andrew Thomas was actually playing tackle functionally for once. So drafting a tackle at 9, bit of a mistake. I think you still try and get a defensive player if one of the really good ones is available. If Carter falls to 9, which is a possibility given what's been going on with him. But you can say all you want. Justin Fields has not shown me anything I need to be worried about as a Minnesota Vikings fan. He's not a good quarterback. He's not a good passer.
He's the best quarterback in that division now. I mean, you got Kirk Cousins, who just goes ahead and crumbles on the biggest stage.
I might take Jordan Love over what we've seen so far from Justin Fields. If I wanted someone to run for me, I would go get a running back. We can run Wildcat all day long. Because the difference between a team like the Miami Dolphins, who back in the day ran Wildcat a whole lot, and Justin Fields' accuracy is marginal. Justin Fields is not a good passer of the football, and as we've seen from the Super Bowl, you need to be a good passer of the football to actually win at the highest levels. Speaking of winning at the highest levels, though, the Carolina Panthers will not be doing any of that anytime soon. We talked a little bit about what they got back from the trade. They've also gone out and signed Andy Dalton, who presumably will be I don't think he's going to be the week 1 starter if the Panthers hold on to this pick. The Panthers are not going to overdraft AR-15. They're not going to draft Levis high. They're going to get Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Reports indicate CJ Stroud's a favorite. Stroud will be the week 1 starter. I don't care how good Andy Dalton is. They're going to let him go out behind the offensive line and try and do the best he can. If he'll succeed, I don't know. They just trade away what would have been his best receiving threat. Presumably, they'll try and build something in the draft or what remains in free agency. Maybe they sign Odell in his old stomping grounds where Josh Norman bullied him, let him go play for the Panthers. I don't know. But I think the assumption that they'll have a top 10 pick is a bit ridiculous. Right now, I think they're the second best team in the NFC South. Maybe the third, depending on how you view the Falcons. But the Buccaneers are going to be worse than them. The Saints right now, it's hard to tell. They've got talent, but part of that talent might be arrested. Part of that talent's probably going to be injured by week 5, and part of that talent's Derek Carr, who looked horrible last year. So you really don't know. I wouldn't guarantee a top 10 pick by any means.
When it comes down to their quarterback situation, and there's also that conversation around the fact that they might be willing to trade down. So that tells me that I think they're pretty heavily interested in Anthony Richardson, because the fact they signed Andy Dalton, it's the consensus that Anthony Richardson isn't ready to start week 1. So if you're going out and signing a veteran quarterback, you're preparing for the possibility that you don't want your rookie to start week 1. And I think most people expect that if Bryce Young or whoever Bryce Young and CJ Stroud get drafted by, they're going to be better than any veteran we have in the league, and we're going to want, or teams are going to want to see them start right away. That way they can go through that learning process and hit the ground running. So I think moving towards Andy Dalton is showing a willingness and maybe even wanting to target Anthony Richardson, whether it's trading down for someone trading up. I don't really understand that move regardless, but I think the Andy Dalton signing shows that. Now when it comes to
Can I address that just real quick? I think that's a ridiculous take. You know Matt
Well,
Corral.
you moved on to the Panthers topic without letting me talk about Justin Fields, but sure, you can address that.
Yeah, because the fans really want to hear you talk about how great Justin Fields is. 50% accuracy, man. But any NFL team who's going to bring in a rookie quarterback wants to have a good veteran presence. Dalton was the best and presumably the cheapest for what he was. Former Pro Bowler, longtime starter. That's who you want being your backup, giving your rookie tips, regardless of who that rookie is. We thought they were going to go sign Brian Hoyer or let Carroll ride it out. Like, it's the right move. Them signing a good veteran is not an indication, okay, we're going to roll with him week one. It's an indication we're going to put our rookie in the best situation possible, regardless of who that rookie is. So I think you're reading way too much into that.
I think if they were drafting CJ Stroud, they wouldn't have maybe gone out and really targeted to bring in Andy Dalton. That's all I'm saying. And because there's also been the reports of them being willing to trade down. Now, I think it was a bit ridiculous if they actually trade down from that pick. I don't see them getting equal value for what they would have given, for what they've already given up. If that does happen, that's a crazy scenario. When it comes to how good the Panthers are in the rest of their division, you have the Saints who have Derek Carr. I think he's going to be very solid after a horrible year with Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels was the bad one there. Then Baker Mayfield, he's headed to the Buccaneers. I think everyone's expecting them to be bad, but Baker Mayfield was great at the end of last season. Right now, at least, no trades have happened. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin are still on that roster. 2 elite receivers. Then you have Scotty Miller. Scotty Miller's still there, right? So the Buccaneers have a good receiving core. Their defense still has a lot of good personnel left there. If Baker Mayfield is as good as he was at the second half of last season, the Buccaneers are going to win more games than we expect. Now with the Falcons, it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the quarterback position. Marcus Mariota is no longer there. Desmond Ridder did not look all that good. So right now, the worst team, right, is between the Falcons and Panthers, in my opinion. I think the Buccaneers are going to win more games than people expect. Baker Mayfield is going to be better than whatever the Falcons have going on there. We don't really know what's going to happen with the Panthers. And then the Saints, they have Derek Carr. They're going to be good to go.
So do you think Baker Mayfield being on the Panthers means they win more games than
He's on the Buccaneers.
The Buccaneers than last year with Tom Brady? Because they won 8 games. They were a bad team last year with Tom Brady.
They also didn't have a great offensive line. Their starting center missed a majority of the season. And Tom Brady, for as good as he was maybe at processing the game and still having an arm, he was completely immobile behind a bad offensive line with also a poor running game. So that came into account. Now, if the Buccaneers are able to improve upon those things, that's up for debate whether or not that'll actually take place. But I think the Buccaneers are definitely still in play to at least win 8 games or be just as good as they were with Tom Brady last season.
I greatly doubt that. The left side of that offensive line is still horrible. Like, they've got one of the worst left tackle situations.
I don't think they're going to be a good team.
You stick a Baker Mayfield who doesn't have the best pocket awareness in the world in that situation, he might get sacked 50 times. For the left side alone. I don't know. The NFC South is hard to predict. It could completely turn around and go from what the NFC least was to now having 3 teams in the playoffs this year. You never know. It's hard to say. But it's splitting hairs. No good team will come out of the conference unless the Saints somehow remain healthy and uninjured. Alright, this is the first fan question we are ever going to answer on a podcast. And our good buddy Golden Pitt asked, if the Cowboys were to get rid of Dak Prescott, how should they do it? And the best answer to that question is try and trade him. Someone out there will take Dak Prescott. He's a borderline top 10 quarterback. There's wiggle room one way or the other. He's not truly elite, but he's also not someone who's a bum. Some team who is desperate for a quarterback, like say maybe the Falcons, who need someone will say, hey, we'll give you a first round pick or 2 for that. They don't care about the size of the contract, or they won't, even if it's guaranteed, and they'll try and get Dak Prescott. I find it hard to believe the Cowboys would try and get rid of Dak Prescott. I think that'd be a bold and dynamic move, a Jerry Jonesian move for the ages, but the best way is to make a trade. You can't cut him. You can't really just have him mentor a rookie quarterback you draft. His contract's too big for that. I do believe a team would be willing to give at least a first, maybe even more, for Dak Prescott. Why they don't want to get rid of him, I don't know. It's not like there's an easy, better upgrade available.
If the Cowboys were to get rid of him, they should do exactly what happened with Tony Romo. They should draft a 3rd round rookie who winds up just being phenomenal his rookie season after Dak Prescott throws 5 interceptions in week 1, or if he happens to trip over himself and break his ankle again, and then that rookie goes in, lights it up, and they send Dak Prescott off to the broadcasting booth. That's what the Cowboys should do with Dak Prescott. Look to be drafting his replacement, because we all know he's average at this point. He's Black Kirk Cousins with the ability to move around in the pocket and run down the field a little bit. That's that's what he is. He's not that good, or he is good, but he's also not that great. So that's what I think they should do. I don't think there's any team willing out there actually willing to trade for him, especially seeing him lead the NFL in interceptions after missing a lot of the season due to injury. Now that's kind of a whatever answer to the question, but I don't.
That's a pure unadulterated hating answer right there. You should have just said, let Cooper Rush have the starting job and make Dak Prescott hold the clipboard. If you're really committed to hating like it seems you are, just talk about Cooper Rush. He's not the answer, but he should have been yours.
I'm baiting Cowboys beat into comments.
Cowboys beat 8 here 20 minutes in, man. Unless you make this the promo clip, that dude is not watching. Although if he is, let us know, man. We will get you on one of these podcasts eventually.
But regardless, I don't see anyone wanting to trade for Dak, so I don't think there's a how should you really move off of him anyway.
Someone would trade.
I don't see anyone wanting that contract.
Someone would trade for him. There are worse contracts out there. There are several worse contracts out there. But sticking with the Dallas Cowboys, they've made a few moves this offseason which make them a little bit better of a team, just a twinge. First off, it looks like they're getting rid of longtime running back Ezekiel Elliott, whose final play as a Cowboy was getting pancaked when he snapped the ball, which is unfortunate for him. I feel bad. Zeke really did deserve better. I think he's gotten a rotten treatment and injuries kind of derailed his career. I don't blame him for how it turned out. Someone will sign him, and if he gets a lion's share of the backfield, he's going to have between 600 and 1,000 yards. He's still a decent running back. He'll find work. They also brought in Brandon Cooks, which I think is a pretty good move. It gives them a wide receiver 2, not a good wide receiver 2. Cooks is like a 5'4" slot receiver who hasn't been the same since he got knocked out in the Super Bowl. His production on the Texans when he was getting 800 targets a year was alright, but as a wide receiver 2, I'm not optimistic. And they got Stephon Gilmore, who paired with Trayvon Diggs, I get Gilmore's old and a little bit washed out. That's still a meaningful 1-2 punch at the cornerback position. I think the Cowboys got better. I think the cornerbacks will aid Micah Parsons' pass rush and the rest of the Cowboys' front seven. It'll make them look better. But it's not something which is going to put them over the top. It's not going to get them over a team like the Eagles in their own division, even though the Eagles lost the majority of their defense, it seems. I think they'll still win 11 to 12 games, be in that similar range, not compete for the Super Bowl. Make the divisional round.
Well, cutting Zeke had to happen with what we saw at the end of last season. He's simply not an explosive running back anymore. And I don't really see a team that's going to go out there and give him any type of real money. I don't see a team that's going to go out there and be willing to give him more than 5 to 6 carries a game. So there's no way he reaches 600 rushing yards next season. And when it comes to Brandon Cooks, I am much higher on the move than you are. Although I do think it doesn't necessarily change life in Dallas. He's not that quality of a player. But when you take a look at even over the last 3 seasons, 2,000-yard seasons, this past season, it was very clear he was not happy with the Texans. He wanted to be traded before the trade deadline. He missed games due to that. Also, I don't remember if he was injured or not, but missed games due to that. Missed 4 games last season. And if you take his average yards per game and extrapolate that over the 17-game season, he would have had over 900 receiving yards. So he was also playing on the Texans, who had a trio of quarterbacks playing every single game. That's how big of a shit show they were. So I think Brandon Cooks still has a lot left in the tank, and he's much better than what the Cowboys had at wide receiver 2 last season. They had Michael Gallup, who was a shell of his former self, lost his ability to get down the field, lost any speed that he once had. He was a jump ball receiver that didn't necessarily create separation at an elite level. He was like 105th in total receiving yards last season, and he's much better than the aging T.Y. Hilton. So from that standpoint, very solid trade for the Cowboys, although I don't think he changes life in Dallas. It's not like they just added someone like DeAndre Hopkins or one of those receivers who's top 10 in the NFL, where it completely opens up the Cowboys offense, much like an Amari Cooper type receiver would do. Now, comes to the Gilmore move, I love that for the Cowboys. As a very good corner opposite Trevon Diggs. Obviously, maybe he's lost a slight step just due to aging, but as a technician at the corner position, it's one of the hardest positions to play in the NFL. He's never been the elite athlete that we've seen at the position. Like, he's not at Deion Sanders with 4.2 speed, but he's one of the best to do it. So I think that's a very good move. He's going to be better than Anthony Brown. Overall, the Cowboys got better. Do I think they're going to make a Super Bowl push? No, from the moves they've made so far, but I'm much higher on that Cooks move than you are.
Cooks ain't getting 120 plus targets, which was why he was a 1,000-yard receiver. It's just not happening in Dallas. Assuming they hold on to Pollard, they still got a good run game. They'll probably draft a running back in the 2nd or 3rd round, get good value out of him. CeeDee Lamb's still number 1 number one targets. They're still going to have some functional tight ends, presumably. I don't know what the deal with their tight end situation is, but we'll have to wait and see on that. Cooks is not getting 1,000 yards. He's not moving the needle at all, I think. But hey, he's also on the wrong side of 30 and had some injury issues. We don't need to get into that. Speaking of wrong side of 30, Jalen Ramsey is a Miami Dolphin. The Dolphins traded a third-round pick and a player who was previously selected in the third round for Ramsey. It's a good move for the Dolphins, good move for the Rams. Rams clear up cap space. It looks like they're moving forward into the full tank mode. They are going to try to keep Caleb Williams in California, in LA, make him a Ram with the first overall pick, which they do in fact have possession of, I believe, in 2024, which is shocking considering their approach to first-round picks. But the Dolphins now have a true number one cornerback, in addition to what they already had. They've got a dynamic cornerback duo now. Ramsey was locked down last year. Maybe not the same player we saw previously in Jacksonville, but still top 5 cornerback by all measures. He is going to greatly aid their efforts to stop Stephon Diggs, to stop whoever the Jets are throwing to in high volume with Aaron Rodgers. He's going to greatly hinder the passing attacks they might run into in the playoffs. This is a great move for Miami. They're going to have to pay Ramsey eventually, or just leave him, let the third round picks be the price for 1 or 2 seasons of production. It's going to open up their window a little bit. It helps the Dolphins defense. It's going to put them back above average and let them have a real shot of going on a playoff run.
Well, he's still a very good player. Now, the Dolphins trading for him, last time they traded for, he wasn't quite on the Ramsey level, but last time they traded for an elite member to add to their secondary, Byron Jones, it did not necessarily pan out how they wanted to. And I think the fact that the Rams were only able to get a third round pick for Jalen Ramsey kind of shows where the league values him at his contract. I don't think he's quite the bona fide best corner in the NFL by far that we've seen, but much like with Gilmore, still a very solid player in the NFL. Most teams should want him on the roster, and he has one of the best corners in the NFL playing right next to him in Xavier Howard. So it definitely helps that Dolphins defense. It helps them take another step closer towards making a playoff push, making it potentially Super Bowl push. Although at the end of the day, Jalen Ramsey plays corner, and the Dolphins are only going to go as far as Tua can take them. And Tua seems to be concussed every single week, seems to get injured every single season, something random, whether it's getting hit in the pocket or making a scramble down the field. So it may not change life in Miami just because you never know what you're getting from the quarterback position in there.
Sounds like some Tua hate to me, but we don't need to go there. The old lover of the social media quarterback. Definitely a positive, and given what the Dolphins had to give up, I think it's worthwhile, even if it's only for 1 season.
I mean, I think it's considering they didn't give up much, you might as well trade for him.
Would you like to lead us into the next topic? I know you're passionate.
Now, Darren Waller, when I saw this move, I was so happy because I don't know if people remember the video I made a couple seasons ago. It's one of the first videos that got more views on our TikTok page. It was calling Darren Waller by far, or not by far, but I called him the best tight end in the NFL, ahead of Travis Kelce, ahead of George Kittle, ahead of Mark Andrews, and I won't mention who was 5th on my list at the time because that was the coldest of that take.
No, the coldest of the take was Waller being 1.
Well, at the time, there was an argument for it. Now it's kind of, it's cooled down, but I don't know if you remember who's 5, and you can bring that up and call me out on that if you want, but that's the worst part of that take by far. And when we've seen Darren Waller healthy, keyword healthy, he is one of the 4 elite tight ends in the NFL. He has that ability. He was the reason the Raiders offense functioned the 2 years he had 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Now, when it comes down to his health, he's been injured a lot. 2 seasons ago, injured a lot, not really able to play. This past season, Devontae Adams comes in. We're excited to watch the combo of Adams, Waller, and Hunter Renfrow, and Derek Carr. That doesn't really happen, mostly because Waller's constantly hurt, and mostly because Renfrow is constantly hurt. So I think that's the reason the Raiders only really got, it's essentially a 4th round pick being pick 100, although they are calling it a 3rd round pick because it was a compensatory pick. So I love the move for the Giants. It adds an elite threat to their passing game that they haven't had since Odell left the Giants like 4 or 5 seasons ago. Great trade. One of my favorite players in the NFL, so having him on your favorite team is just going to be fun to watch. And I don't think the Giants really gave up much to get him. I mean, 4th round pick, potentially an elite tight end threat. I mean, Travis Kelce's 3 years older than him. Darren Waller is only 30. If he's able to stay healthy, it's a phenomenal trade just because of what he's capable of producing.
Yeah, let's stop comparing people to Travis Kelce. Okay, that's a first ballot Hall of Fame tight end. But was it Cal Pitts? Is that who you're talking about? Is that number 5?
No, it's much worse than that.
You're going to have to tell me that because it's not on YouTube.
It's on TikTok.
I'm not able to pull up. Go ahead and share with the class. Who was number 5?
At the time, the Patriots kind of signed those two tight ends.
Did you say Jonnu? Wow.
I said Jonnu. At the time, I felt that was also off the heels of Jonnu Smith, I think, having 8 or 9 touchdowns with the Titans.
Let me just pull this up real quick. Jonnu Smith. I want to spell his name right. Man, he had like 600. Oh, that was a bad take.
He had 8 touchdowns with the Titans that year, and I was really high on what he was capable of doing, citing his receiving yards being lower because he was part of that Titans offense that ran the ball 3,000 times. But we don't need to talk about that because it was a bad take.
He's had clearly not a top 5 tight end. 448 yards the year pre-Geck. And they signed Hunter Henry at the same time to tell you what they thought was ability to receive. Yeah, that's a bad take. Look, if Darren Waller does the impossible and survives MetLife's turf for an entire season and gets the receiving production, gets the 120 targets he was used to as the number 1 guy on a much pass-heavier team in the Raiders at the time, it'll be a good trade. He'll have elite numbers again. I question his health, and I question if Daniel Jones is going to be able to get the ball to him that much, and I question if they're even going to pass that much, because we both know the engine of that offense is Saquon Barkley, and Saquon Barkley got, 70, 80 targets last season? Maybe 70, 80 receptions last season. I don't see Waller taking many of those from him. Maybe he takes some from Darius Slayton, but I don't know.
Well, you have the ability to pass the ball more when you add an elite receiving threat to your offense. The Giants haven't had someone, certainly last season, don't have someone of Darren Waller's caliber. So when you insert that into the offense, it's something else for the defense to worry about. It's going to open up their rushing attack even more. It's going to allow the receivers who were producing last season, like Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton, to be open more. So it's overall a great move. And on top of that, Daniel Bellinger, for what it's worth, seemed to be a very solid to okay tight end. So now they even have another good tight end sitting behind him. So there's no way I think you can really detract from this move. It only makes the Giants better. It doesn't make them worse. And on top of it, Darren Waller seems like a pretty great guy, good leader, going to add a veteran presence to that locker room.
Now you're talking about players' character to justify the moves. Okay, that is an admission of defeat, even if you don't want to acknowledge. He's a high character guy. We say things like that about Christian McCaffrey and Adam Thielen, man. If Waller stays healthy and has anywhere close to production did, it's a good move. But if he has to put his hand down in the dirt and never block at all, which if they run the ball as much as they did last season, he will. He ain't surviving. Plain and simple. He is not built for MetLife. He's not built to run block. He's built to be a wide receiver. He needs to go back to his old college position. That's the only way he finds success.
You're just a hater.
I'm a truther. But speaking of Darren Waller's former team, unless you want to talk about his greatness from 2 years ago more.
No, I'm good.
You got that out of your system. The Las Vegas Raiders are making some interesting moves. They're shipping off their talent. Waller's gone. Devontae Adams presumably gone very soon if they can get the right draft capital for him. And they have signed Jimmy Garoppolo. Here's a take you're not ready for. Jimmy Garoppolo and Josh McDaniels are going to work out much better than Derek Carr and McDaniels did last season. And they're going to win, but they're going to win more games than last year with Carr, even through his subtraction and through the subtraction of Waller, a so-called elite tight end. We want to talk about clubhouse guys. Jimmy Garoppolo is the ultimate clubhouse guy. No one has anything bad to say about Jimmy Garoppolo, except the occasional Patriots complaining he didn't go and further injure himself for a meaningless Week 4 game to go play. We don't need to get into that, though. The Patriot way stinks. Go check out our other most recent YouTube video if you want to learn more about that. That team's going to be more competitive than you think. They're going to be better than last year. They're going to build a little bit through the draft. They're going to move forward with Jimmy G as a starter. Fill in time, he's probably going to be stuck mentoring a rookie quarterback, and they are going to thrive, certainly more than they did with Carr last year. They're not going to be competing for the first overall pick. They are going to be around that 6 to 9, maybe even 10 win mark. They could sneak into the playoffs. You never know. But Jimmy Garoppolo's addition certainly helps that team. You are going to dismiss the move because you're a Jimmy G hater. You hate the personality, you hate the man, you hate the jawline. He's got twice the jawline you do and half the weight, but...
Well, the notion that the offense may look better with Jimmy G, I don't think is crazy because all of the reports kind of stated that Derek Carr and Josh McDaniels simply did not get along, and they're bringing in a player that Josh McDaniels has gotten along with and has been successful with. So I don't think that take is an outlandish one, but the Raiders as a roster, they're not any better. They have that tag on Josh Jacobs. They only have him for another season. There's been no reports of it, but we don't know if he's going to play this year yet. Are they maybe going to trade him because he's only on that 1 year deal? And the only elite part they have left to their offense is Devontae Adams. So their offense overall is not that great as far as talent goes. Their offensive line is not that great. Their defense is not good. All they have on that side of the ball is Max Crosby, that Chandler Jones acquisition did nothing for them. He is far past his prime. So the Raiders as a team are not that good. I don't see them being that good, although they may look more functional just because they have Jimmy G and Josh McDaniels who have more rapport, but they're not going to be making any waves in the NFL or AFC with that team because the roster is simply just not good enough.
You know, I think it'd be really funny if the Raiders with Jimmy Garoppolo are somehow better than the Packers with Aaron Rodgers. I know it's unrelated entirely, but if we want to talk about groundbreaking moves in the AFC at the quarterback position, I'd get a real kick if the Raiders squeaked into the wild card and the Jets didn't.
I mean, I would enjoy it too.
I think America would enjoy it in general. Anyway, you got anything else?
I don't have anything else.
You can do the outro.
That has been this week's podcast. Like we said, check out our Discord, leave podcast topic suggestions, leave YouTube video suggestions, leave TikTok suggestions over there. Also, just join it to chat. We've been talking about some of the NFL moves, NFL offseason moves over there. Use code THICKONUNDERDOG, THICC. If you like our content, if you want to support us, download the app, use code THICK, and we will subscribe to our YouTube channel, second of all, like the video, and we will see you in the next one.